Everybody, and welcome to episode 8 of the Second Cup Show, where we make peace with being human. I am so excited to introduce you to Paige Allen today. Um, Paige has written a really beautiful book called He Knows Your Name. I have it right here. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to do a giveaway with my Second Cup subscribers. So be looking and listening for that. And this book, He Knows Your Name, the subtitle is How 7 Nameless Women of the Bible Reveal Christ's Love for You. And when I had the opportunity to read this book, I jumped on it and I loved every single bit of it. And so it feels like a real honor to be sitting across from Paige today. And so I just like to say, welcome, Paige. And
Thank
with
you.
could you just jump in and tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, what you're passionate about?
I would love to. I'm really excited to be here with you this morning. So my name is Paige Allen. I live in Texas, and if you see my handle down there, that's pretty obvious. So I am a wife. I'm a mom of 2 middle school girls. So um,
Okay.
yeah, you could actually. My girls are amazing, but we're kind of in the thick of the drama and the hormones. But and I'm a pastor. I work at a church in Lubbock, Texas, and I wear a lot of hats here. I get to do some great things. We have a home for women who are kind of getting a second chance to rewrite their stories, and I give oversight to that. I oversee our women's ministry, global missions, and I'm on the communication team. So I do that, and then I wrote this book that I'm so excited that we're going to talk about today.
I am so excited about it too. I am so glad that you came on here to speak with us today, because I feel like this is a message in your book that so many people can relate to and so many people need to hear. So I'll segue into that by saying, again, when I saw the title of your book come across my inbox as somebody who I might get to speak to, I saw the subtitle, How 7 Nameless Women of the Bible Reveal Christ's Love for You. And I was instantly hooked with that word nameless because, and people who follow the Second Cup at all, they'll know this. This is not old new news to them, I should say. But I have really been wrestling with just the whole concept of how our culture tells us, or maybe just in our country, but maybe across the world, that we need to make a name for ourselves. I think in our education, in the books that we read, in the stores that we go to, with the little slogans that we read, everywhere we go, there are these kind of subliminal messages like, you're only worthy, you're only successful if people know your name. Make a name for yourself. And so your book is completely countercultural. And I was hoping you could just talk to us a little bit more about that word nameless, and also maybe offer a little bit of encouragement for people who are wondering, gosh, nobody does know my name. What am I doing with my life? Am I doing enough? Am I loved? Am I worthy?
Yes, absolutely. I feel this too. And I actually I knew I was going to write a little bit about that, but I didn't know fully. What I just knew was, like you, I work with a lot of women, here at the church, and what I found was this consistent thing of, regardless of stage of life or age, everyone was asking these same questions, And so I remember like sitting across from a girl in her 20s who was just hoping to get married, and her namelessness was in a different kind of box, but just like, why are guys not why are they not taking notice? It's like, nobody knows who I am. And at work, I'm on the bottom of the pecking order, and I'm just doing spreadsheets all day, and when am I ever going to be known? And then I would talk to another woman who, maybe was a mom with little kids and was just like, Paige, it's just goldfish crackers and, changing diapers and trying to get my kids buckled, and at the end of the day, I look up and I'm like, what did I do? Like, definitely no one knows my name other than my kids, and they don't even really know my name. They just know me as, whatever, mom. And
And they see it all day.
exactly. And I don't want to hear that name anymore. And
Mhm.
but then I also started talking to some really amazing wise women who are older that were finding themselves as empty nesters or even widows, and also facing a totally different angle of it, but just like, what's now? What now? Like, I ran my race and I raised these kids, and yet I think I still have another 30 years, like, but what's my purpose? And you're right. I think that it's a little bit just natural human nature to want to feel significance, to want to feel like our lives matter and we are for fulfilling God's purpose. But we layer that with all of culture, all of the
Mhm.
messages that we're getting, which is, how many people know your name? What does your platform look like? What stages have you been on? If you own a business, how successful is it? Like, how profitable are you being? And so literally almost in every industry of life, we have created these constructs that it's like, this is what it looks like to be successful. And so I think that was in the back of my mind. And I was talking to a lady one day after a Bible study, and she just happened to use the phrase that she was studying the nameless women of the Bible. She was talking to me
Mm.
specifically about a woman in the Old Testament. And she, like you, she just used that phrase, nameless women, and she walked away. And it just kind of like lodged in my heart. And I was like, the nameless women. And I started realizing that I was already like studying them. I had not labeled them or put them in a category, but I was so drawn to the woman with the issue of blood or the woman at the well, or there were just so many different stories. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to kind of go on a journey and try to dive deep in the word of God at just looking at the nameless women. And this is what I kept thinking. We don't know their names, and yet their stories are still teaching us centuries later. And if I could just stop worrying about my name being known, you know, and instead was just like, Lord, use my life, in a way that glorifies you and that can benefit the people that are coming behind me. Like, am I okay with that? Like, I kind of had to wrestle. Am I okay with that? And I came to a place
Mhm.
of like, yeah, I am. And I actually think most people would be. We just want our lives to matter. And so yeah, that's kind of where all that came from, with all these nameless women.
Oh, oh, well, and as you're talking about the different nameless women and
Mhm.
how their stories all of these years later are still being told and taught from, it reminds me of the story with the woman who pours the oil all over
Mhm.
Jesus's feet, wipes his feet with her hair. Um,
Mhm.
isn't it there where Jesus says, like, everywhere or what is oh,
Yeah.
shoot, I'm sure you can
I'm
say it
not
better than I, but
I'm not
well,
gonna get it exactly, but like from this day forward, your name will be your name will be known or something like that. Maybe
that's
it's
right,
not
like,
that specific, but I
like,
have
she
my
will
book. I'm
always
looking.
be this woman will
Yes.
always be remembered,
Be
um,
remembered. Yes. Mhm.
and her story will be told, and Jesus was absolutely right about that because here we are today in 2024 talking
Mhm.
about that woman, and that's pretty
Exactly.
astounding. That is pretty astounding if you stop and think about it. That woman didn't have an Instagram. She didn't
Mhm.
have a platform. She didn't
Mhm.
go about making a name for herself. She was just overcome by love.
Yes.
And she was just coming near to the Lord. And
Mhm.
that is what she is known for. So
Right.
maybe we could take a lesson from that. Um, well, I'm just
Absolutely.
thinking of that more as we're talking it out.
I know. I know. In that story too, we're actually told the name of the Pharisee that Jesus was at his house, Simon the Pharisee. And so
Um,
even in that, like, one person got their name told, but we don't know him in a positive light.
yeah.
And the woman, we will never know her name, but she's a lesson for us to learn from, a model for us of exactly like, what if I worried less about my name being known and I worried more about just getting close to his feet and worshiping him? Like, yeah, I think
Yeah.
that kind of life is the life that others take notice of, you know? So, yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
as you're talking about that,
Mhm.
the kind of life that others take notice of, I cannot
Mhm.
help but bring this question to you because there
Okay.
are so many people in the second cup community who are working on building some sort of platform to share their
Mhm.
art, to share their message that they feel like the Lord has given them, to share their beautiful poetry, etc. And
Mhm.
I have the privilege of knowing a lot of these people, and I feel like I'm right alongside them. We're constantly hearing this message, and I know for those who dream of, for example, publishing a book traditionally,
Mhm. Mhm.
especially maybe, we're hearing this
Mhm.
message that we do have to be known. We do
Mhm.
have to have X number of followers. We do need to build an email list. We do need to be standing on stages and talking to
Mhm.
lots of people and have a reputation. And there's this tension there
Right.
because maybe in our hearts, we've come to that place of wrestling, just like you were talking about. Like, is it okay if nobody knows my name? But that I am helping draw people to the feet of Jesus. And we maybe have come through that wrestling and been like, yes, it is okay. And I have this inside me that I want to get to other people.
Mhm.
But then we're hearing messages that no, you need to promote yourself. You need to have a name or you can't share this message. And it's just like this really hard tension. And I was
Right.
just like, what is your perspective on that? Being a traditionally published author,
Mhm.
um, and somebody who clearly loves Jesus. What do we do with this?
I know. It's so hard. It is this tension, that we're constantly, I know I am constantly battling. I would say this, okay, two things. The first thing is this is that for me at least, I really have had to check my heart. Because I can just so easily get caught back up in in trying to build myself up, in trying to align myself, not even with the people that I'm in agreement with or in sync with of common messages, but followers. And actually, like in the process of writing this, okay, so something that's so interesting, and I think I barely touch on it, is I got this book idea probably 9 years ago, like wrote the book proposal, the whole 9 yards, 9 years ago. And I went to a couple of writers' conferences. And at my very first writers' conference, I, pitched it, I think, to three people. And I'll never forget one of those pitch meetings. The lady, she was actually eating lunch. Where I know her now to this day. She's actually a lovely lady. She's eating her lunch, she's eating her cookie, and she's like sitting back and she's like, okay, go. And so I start going, and I'm like, I've got like 15 minutes or whatever.
Of course.
And it was great because as I start to explain, I have this vision of writing this book about the unnamed woman of the Bible. She actually put her cookie down and she leaned forward. And so she's like, tell me more. And we had a great conversation. And I gave her my book proposal. But she actually said, I want you to, do you see this stack right here? And there was a stack sitting next to her chair that was almost up to the armrest of her chair. And she said, I'm going to put your papers right here. And I just need you to see, you know, all of these book proposals I've been given. And she said, and a lot of them are really good. And she was
Uh,
so kind though. She said, I will tell you this. I will read your book proposal. I am intrigued enough. And I think she put like a sticky note on it or something. She goes, I want you to see this. And so she put it to the side and I left. And I actually heard back from her like a couple weeks later. And she said, I did read it. I like the idea. I like you, but I don't know if anyone knows your name. And she said it in a really kind way, like, like, bottom line, we are a business and we have
Right.
to figure out if we can sell this book. And she said, so what if we take 6 months? And basically she said, you work on some stuff, you work on your platform. And she gave me some specific things to do. And I did the things. And I even did more sample writing. And we had a couple more meetings. And at the end of the day, she sent me an email that just said, I took it again to the board, the publishing board. And bottom line, we don't feel like we can sell this book. I like
Oh,
it. I like the idea. And I think something in the line was like, if it was someone else, we would definitely sign this book. And
okay. That's
right? Like, and I mean, I was crushed, right? And I'm sure so many people listening, you've probably had a similar experience, or maybe you haven't even gotten that far. I think the fact that I had gotten that far, like my hopes had just really like started to rise, and this is
I
gonna
was gonna say, I think
happen.
it makes it worse. Yeah, it's worse
Yeah,
that way.
and so I was so crushed. I put it on the shelf. I put it on the shelf and prayed about it. And I actually went back to that same conference a year later. I reached out to her again, and she encouraged me to try to get an agent. And I met with a couple of agents, and the things that they wanted me to do, it just didn't feel true to who I was to try to build my platform. And I just came to a place finally, Deidre, where I just felt like the Lord was like, just just trust me. Just trust me and do what is in front of you today. And so I 100% put it on the shelf. I looked at self-publishing. I had self-published a couple of Bible studies before, so I understood that process. But for me, I knew in my spirit for some reason, and even when I was praying, the Lord said, "Don't self-publish this. It's supposed to go farther than what your reach is, but you have to trust me with my timing." And so I put it on the shelf. And in that season, I'm going to tell you, I was super tempted to try to, I don't know, try to create a false platform. And I think that's maybe where it comes in, is I don't think there is actually anything wrong with a platform. It's just, is it the platform that God has called you to? Or are you just trying to mimic what you've seen so many other people do that have had, a level of success? And it
Right.
was in that season too that God so worked on my heart. I share this story in the book. It's about India. And
I love
I
this story. I
you love that
loved it.
story. Okay. Well, so I love India. I've been 5 times, and I maybe no, it wasn't the last time I went. It's the fourth time that I went. Um, I had an amazing trip. It was an all women's trip. We were doing women's conferences. And I had this interesting, like, 24 hours where I spoke at 3 different women's events. And the first one was like basically like a small group in a woman's home. It was like, a late morning. And these were, I would call them probably like middle class um, Indian women. They all spoke English and they had kids. I literally felt like, oh, I'm back. I'm back home, like with some of my friends. And I mean, we drank tea and had
Yeah.
cookies, and we like had this amazing conversation. And I spoke a little bit about worry and trusting the Lord, and it was so great. I didn't even want to leave, but I had to leave, and got in the car and drove about an hour away to a real impoverished area of India, kind of in the slums of India. And in this location, no one spoke English. They spoke more of a almost a tribal language,
Mm.
and word had gotten out that we were coming. And so we were like in this tiny, like concrete cinder blocks room building, and the women, they just came out of everywhere, the whole area. And there were no chairs. I mean, they were sitting on the ground, on the concrete. Like, it was so tight. I remember speaking, and my back was against this cold concrete wall because there was just no space. And I'm looking up, and there's these tiny, like, little windows with bars, and there are women's faces through. And then next door there were women listening, and I ended up speaking on the exact same thing, on worry. And they were just so receptive, and it was just beautiful. And then that night we're going back, and my contact, she calls me later and she says, hey, can you do one more? It was our last day. And she goes, I know you're tired, but this opportunity just opened up and it's really cool. I think you're going to love it, but your team can't come, just you. And I was like, I mean, okay, sure. I think it was like a in sightseeing day. So I sent them off and I went with her, and this was very much like the affluent neighborhood in Mumbai. And we go into this really nice apartment, and I walk in, and I'm kind of like, what is going on? Like, why can't my team come? And she begins to explain to me. She goes, well, this is kind of like India's elite. A lot of these girls are Bollywood actresses and models, um, and she introduced me to this pastor's wife who had met once before, and she and her husband had started a specific ministry, specifically reaching out to, their terminology was the up and in instead of the down and out. And
Mm.
so there were security issues and whatnot. And so I'm sitting in this room, and with literally the most gorgeous women I have probably ever seen in my life, and
I can
and yet they
only
were.
imagine.
Can you?
I've
Yeah, I
seen
mean,
some
like,
Bollywood things.
yeah. And
Yeah.
and yet they were just so free to be themselves. I mean, most of them didn't have on makeup, and we just had these great conversation. And again, I spoke on work. It was so interesting. I did the exact same message all three places, and they're just sharing, and it was wonderful. And so I was thinking about how unique that moment was, that within 24 hours I had been in like a middle class, like reminded me of me and my friend's home, a very impoverished neighborhood, but just how hungry those women were for the Lord. And it was just such a beautiful, I think I used the word in the book, like every location just felt so holy, you know. And then I sat with these women who, the world was clamoring after, and they also were just so hungry for the Lord. And so I was like, I can't wait to go home and tell people about, like, how the Lord was just in each place. And then I got home and I had jet lag, and I did what I do when I am bored, and I got on Instagram,
Yeah.
and
That's relatable.
and right, and I decided to just try to figure out who the girls were that were at that last home, because I knew that they were like famous, but I'm not familiar with Bollywood. I don't really know. But I again, I knew like the pastor's wife, so I could, like, we know how to do that. We know how to figure stuff out
Oh,
on
yeah. We
Instagram.
can
Oh
see.
yeah, right. We know. And so I'm looking through, and I come across one of them who had just like opened up her heart and like shared, and I just like, so like connected to her, and I go to her profile, and she has 3 million followers, Deidre, and I was like, wait, what?
Okay.
I'm I'm sorry. Like, I was, like, teaching a woman with 3 million followers, and then I look at, like, her friend, and I'm like, "Oh, and she was there," and I look, I'm like, "Oh, she's Miss India." I didn't realize that she
Okay.
was Miss India, like, she had just competed in the Miss Universe pageant and gotten, like, 3rd runner up or something, and then I'm like, and then I look at this one, and this one, and this one, and I did what we do. I kind of just, scrolled and scrolled and scrolled. And what ended up happening is, with each new discovery, it was just like, oh, look at how great you are. Look at, look at how
Mhm.
God used you. Look at how, oh man. And all of a
Yes.
sudden, the story I was telling to my friends changed. And I wasn't talking about the 3 holy moments of God just loving women. Instead, the story was, well, God used me. God used me to get to go talk to these special women. And I actually was preparing to preach a message. And I literally was like, okay, and this is going to be my illustration. And I felt like the Holy Spirit like stopped me and was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, why have you changed this story? Basically, it is now a story about you instead of a story about me. And it's becoming a story that's trying to say, look at this platform I have, instead of look at how God loves his daughters. And he's like, you felt my same presence in every location, because I don't look at Instagram numbers. I look at hearts. And the girl with 3 million followers, she had a hungry, hungry heart. But that lady, who is struggling to survive, she had a hungry, hungry heart. And I met them. And it just so convicted me. And I felt like in that moment too, Deidre, that the Lord was like, and your desires that I have placed them in your heart, this desire for this book, this desire to use the words I'm giving you. Like, I want to use them, but we need to do some refinement in your heart before I can really trust that you can handle a platform that's larger than what you have right now. And, I don't know if that feels harsh, but for me, that's just where I was at. And so, um, here I am, from the initial like book thing that was 9 years, that was probably like 3 years later, 6 years. I just see now that the Lord just had to really do some work in my heart before I was ready for the book deal. And I don't know. I'm not trying to put that. I'm not saying you're not getting a book deal because, there's something wrong with you. I'm not trying to say that at all. I will say this, my book is totally different 9 years later because of what he walked me through. And
Mm.
at this point now, I'm so much like, God, thank you
Yeah.
that the know-it-all Paige, who it was a God idea, but it was not fully formed 9 years ago because I had to work through some things. And the book you wanted me to write, it's different. And so I will say this though, this is the hope. This is the thing. So what ended up happening, here's the thing. My platform in those 9 years actually has not changed a ton. It hasn't. Like if you go to my Instagram right now, go to my Instagram and follow me. But what you're gonna see is
Yes, do.
I don't have 10,000 followers. I don't have 20,000 followers. I don't have 40,000 followers. I don't. I mean,
You don't have 3 million followers, Paige?
I don't have 3 million followers. I think I have a
Even
little
after
over
saying
2,000, I don't, at all. But what ended up happening was, during COVID, I was told about a writing cohort and I was standing in a coffee shop and I felt like the Lord said, you need to apply for that right now. And they were accepting 5 people. And I thought, Lord, I've been rejected. And there were some more rejections in that 9 years. I was still working at it. And I heard him say, go do it right now. And so while I was in that coffee shop, I went and I sat down and I filled out the application. And a month later, I got accepted. And I did this writing like cohort where we basically recreated our book proposals. And in that time, I went back to this original book proposal and I realized, oh, I'm
Mm.
different. Therefore, this proposal needs to be different. And that writing cohort led to an agent. And even the agent was like, it wasn't my plan to take on a new client, but I think I'm supposed to do that. And
That's so
she helped
cool.
me so much to be able to say, you have a platform. Maybe you're just looking at it the wrong way. And we
Mm.
were able to basically say, I don't have all these numbers,
Right.
but I this is what I do have. And so we just recrafted it. And so I would encourage people to say too, like, maybe you have more of a platform than you realize, maybe you just need to look at it from a different angle. Like maybe you should stop comparing your numbers to other people's numbers and instead say, oh, but wait, I have actually taught this many small groups. I have actually, some things like that. And it just kind of went full circle. And so I'm sorry, that was such a long answer, Deidre, but I'm
I
passionate
love
about
every bit of
this.
the Yes, yes, and thank you for just being so transparent too about,
Yeah.
like, the things that you struggled with along the way, and also just how God kind of was instructing your heart,
Mhm.
um, and, like, continually pointing it towards, um, humility. Because
Mm.
I think, I think that's always the fine line that we can walk as people who want to share a message, because it gets so like, we can go into it being just having come out of time with the Lord and being like, yes, Lord, I want this to be all about you. And I want it to be your name, not my name. But then, like you were saying, like maybe we find like some modicum of success and we're like, oh, that was me. Oh,
Mhm.
actually, like I did pretty good. Or, oh,
Mhm.
I got to talk to this. And somewhere along the way, there's just this little tiny switch. And I think that we can find ourselves in some hot water without even realizing that we're kind of wading in the waters of pride.
Mhm. Mhm.
And something that I'm learning is just it is like a continuous coming back to the Lord, like with every whatever it might be, right? Like with every
Yes.
speaking engagement, with every post, Instagram post, with
Mhm.
anything that you do every day, coming back to the Lord and being like, wait, am I still coming from a place of you or am I coming from a place of me? So I
Yes.
just really appreciated you sharing some on that.
Yeah.
And that's encouraging too that
Yeah.
you put I have a book proposal in a drawer. Look, I have it. I have all of the pieces and I
Yes.
actually last week I've had I have a completed book proposal and I had all of the different chapter notes like in front of my desk right here is like a little clothespin line kind of thing.
Mhm.
And I've been
Mhm.
looking at them for a year and a half now. And I I pitched this proposal to an agent this summer
Mhm.
after going to a writer conference, and I was like, "This is it. I have this message." It wasn't my first book proposal, by the way. I've done other ones, but I was like, "This one is the one." The Lord has given it to me. I feel good about it, and I pitched it to an agent. I gave it all I had. I was feeling good, and she looked at me and she was like, "Yeah, no, I have somebody
Mm.
else who has a similar message, and publishers aren't interested in that either." And she has way
Oh.
more followers than you. And I was like, crushed, crushed, crushed. Like, there's someone else with my message, so I'm not unique.
Mhm.
There's somebody else who has more followers than me, so she seems more marketable and more useful, right, than I do.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
the message isn't any good anyway because nobody wants it. And so it was like a triple. But after I stopped crying and got over being crushed for a couple weeks, I just talked with the Lord about it and I felt like he was like, Deidre, like I've given you this dream of a book and I'm going to follow through on it. But you are
Mhm.
just over here trying to like strong arm your way into doing it how you think it should be done and the timing you think it should be done in. And I was like, okay, God, that's kind of true.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it honestly gave me actually a huge like, I felt like this big exhale of relief when I realized that because he was like, "Just stop. Just stop
Yeah.
striving. I got you. You can relax a little bit and
Mhm.
enjoy your life
Mhm.
along the way. You don't have to just be fighting and pushing and trying to grow all the time." Um, and that was just so encouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So I put it in
you know
my desk and it's living there for a
okay.
while,
I
and I'm okay with
I think
that.
that's good. No, that's good. You know, what I would encourage you and someone else, others listening to though, is when it's a God idea and when he gives it to you, um, it will not leave you alone. Like
Yeah.
like in those 9 years, I put it on the shelf, but, the way it worked for me is especially when I was in worship, I would just, like, have another idea and I'd be like, "It's not
Mm.
we're not working on that right now," you know? And he was like, "I know, but just jot that down. Just jot that down." And, like, I just he if it's from him, you will not be able to shake it. And so it's just that, "Okay, Lord, I'm gonna trust you with the timing." And
Yeah.
so much of it comes to trust and obedience. Trust and
Mhm.
obedience. And so if he
Mhm.
tells you to go talk to that exact same agent,
Right.
um, then do it.
Yeah.
The other thing that so helped me, I heard, oh, I'm gonna go blank on her name. Her name is Jamie Lima. She's a makeup lady, and
Oh,
do you know what I'm talking? I don't know who I'm talking about. She did It Cosmetics.
no.
Anyways, she has this quote. She said, "What if we began to reframe rejection, not as there's something wrong with us, but rather that it's the Lord hid our value from that person because they are not connected to our destiny. And
Ooh.
that so resonated in my heart, and because rejection is real and it hurts, and if we don't take it to the Lord, which is what you did, it can spiral us, and we can be totally sidelined for a long time. So
Mhm.
instead of seeing rejection as a personal indictment against us, instead we can just see, oh wait, no, this is God protecting me. Not because there's anything wrong with that person, but they're just not attached to my destiny. And
Mm.
so
Ooh.
he is hiding me and my value from them for this season, but
Mm.
he will unveil it to someone else who is connected, to my destiny. So that
I got
that was a
you on
game
that.
changer. Yeah, right. Like think about it. Think about it. Yes.
Whew. I really gotta like let that soak in. I was getting the
Uh
goosebumps
huh.
on my arms as you were saying that. Oh, yeah. And I don't know, in tandem with what you were just saying there, and where am I going with this? I guess something else that I wanted to bring up was you were talking about, okay, still your platform or your I should say your Instagram following
Right.
is how many? Couple thousand or something,
Yeah.
you said?
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. And it can be easy to look at those people too who very quickly grow their following. And I actually talked about this on another podcast episode with Jennifer Dukes Lee because
Oh
she has
yeah.
her book Growing Slow and
Yes.
talking about the value of growing slow.
And
Um,
she's my
and
acquisitions editor. So she's the one who got my book.
okay,
She was the one connected to my destiny and who saw it. So sorry. I just have to say
it's all
that.
coming
And
full circle here.
she's the lady. She's my
Okay, so
she's the
this
one
is a
who
little shout
said
out
yes.
to Jennifer Dukes Lee. Woot woot.
Woo.
But I guess where I'm going with this is I whenever I start to feel some of that rejection, because I do feel like being a writer, you pretty much get rejected a lot. Like it's like you have to get used to it. Like it's part of the job.
Yeah.
And since I left my teaching job a year and a half
Mhm.
ago to become a full-time writer and editor, I have experienced tons of rejection, or I'll put an idea out there and I'm like, I have a vision for this. The Lord
Mhm.
has given me this vision. It's going to be amazing. And then other people aren't seeing the vision. And I'm like, come on, guys, come see the vision. um, and I guess what I'm saying is sometimes it feel very personal when other people have bigger followings or feel like other people are seeing their vision and not your vision. Um, and I was talking to the Lord about this on Sunday. Actually, I was feeling kind of down about this earlier this week,
Mhm.
and I went on a walk and I was talking to him about this, and he brought to mind the story of the manager and given the talents to
Mhm.
the different
Yes.
right. So one person he gives 10, is it 10, 5 and 1, right?
I think so,
Is
yes.
that right?
I think
In
5,
this
2, and 1. 5, 2, and 1
Okay,
is what I
5, 2
remember.
and 1. So he gives one of his servants 5 talents. He gives another 2, and then he gives another 1. And what struck me most about this story was that it wasn't about how many talents per se that the master in this story gave his servants. There wasn't really like a value judgment
Mhm.
on how many they received. There was a value judgment on what they did with it when
Mhm.
he was away. Like they had been given these certain number of talents, and two of them invested them wisely, and one just buried it in the ground
Mhm.
and didn't trust the master. And so I kind of likened that to be like, okay, maybe the person that I'm comparing myself to on this given day has been given 5 talents.
Mhm.
Maybe I have been given 2 talents at this time. But the Lord doesn't say that those 5 talents make that person more valuable to him. And the 2 talents that I've been given, holy cow, I don't wanna just bury that in the ground and do nothing with it. I have these people that the Lord has given me to be able to communicate with and be in community with and to share his love with. And if I'm
Mhm.
sitting around moping because somebody else has 5 talents, then what a disservice I'm doing, to the Lord, but also to my 2 talents worth of people around me. Um, and that has really helped me just keep a healthy perspective, I think, this week as I've moved forward. I'm like, by golly, I'm going to invest everything I can into those 2 talents of everybody I've been given. I want to give them everything I've got from the Lord and to
That
be
is so
thankful
good.
for each person in that community.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
so good. And because that's what the Lord looks at. Yes, that's so good. Because I
Mhm.
think the enemy wants to whisper to us, well, compare yourself with well, they've got 5, you got 2. You should just go over and be, pout or be sad or feel, dejected. And then you're right, you're not being a good steward with what the Lord has given you. And
Right.
yeah. So, and what a gift that the Lord right now has entrusted you with this community, with the people listening to this podcast and those who are reading your words. Like, yes, that's such a
Yes.
gift.
And I feel so gifted within the Second Cup community. The one of the beautiful things about having, whatever, I think I have like, I don't know, like 1,100 followers on Instagram or something.
Hmm.
But the amount of people that are engaged obviously are far fewer.
Hmm.
But the
Hmm.
people who are engaged, I feel like I have the capacity to actually know them a little bit and
Mm.
to be able to just know their hearts and get to know what they're about. And I feel like that's something that you can't always do when you have 3
Hmm.
million followers.
Right.
And I don't know, I've just been learning to celebrate that and be like, "Hey, like, maybe this is actually a different type of gift, and one
Mm.
is not better than the other." It's just I get this number of people, and I get to steward to them. I don't know.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, so before we wrap up, Paige,
Hmm.
there's so much that I wanted to talk to you about because there were so many. I love each of the women, the nameless women in the book, that you talk about chapter by chapter. So,
Hmm.
if you have been listening to this conversation and you're feeling interested in the book, Paige talks about a couple of the women that she talks about. She alluded to them earlier, but she talks about the woman with the issue of blood. She talks about the widow with 2 mites. Um, Talks about the woman anointing Jesus's feet with oil and washing it with her hair, the woman at the well, and so forth. And each of these women have a life changing experience with Jesus.
Hmm.
And they go from being nameless in the world's eyes and probably just feeling nameless themselves. You talk about this a lot, like what their backgrounds might have looked like and
Hmm.
how they were many of them were feeling like maybe isolated from their communities, alone.
Hmm.
Um, but then they experience Jesus's love, and then everything changes for them.
Yeah.
And I really believe that that is available to every single one of us, man and woman, today in 2024 as well. Um,
Hmm.
And I think that there are so many of us that have heard, like, Jesus loves me, I know, but maybe have never had an experience like that where they have experienced
Hmm.
Jesus's love and
Hmm.
thus been able to like move forth walking in light of that. Do you have any practical steps for someone who is kind of stuck in that before space? Like they want
Hmm.
to experience Jesus's love, they know about it, but they haven't felt it for themselves. Where can they start? Where can they go to feel
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. That's a great question. Because I think you're right. There's a lot of people who, or they believe it in their mind, but yeah, they've just never
Yeah.
like actually like felt loved. And I think part of it, the first step is making a choice to try to step closer towards him. And what I mean by that is, you mentioned earlier, a rejection that hurt, and you went out for a walk and you were just talking to him about it. I mean, I think
Mhm.
it's as practical as that. Like, okay, I'm not gonna pray like you know, this nice, tidy little prayer that feels safe, but instead I'm gonna like actually believe that he's so real that I can just tell him all my stuff and what I'm thinking,
Mhm.
and I can just lay it out. I think sometimes it's just going over that boundary that we've created of like, this is what polite Christianity looks like versus this is what is a relationship with a real person is like. And so I always recommend people just to take that step. And if
Mhm.
you've never done that before, it's scary and it feels a little awkward and you're like, "Am I crazy? Is this?" But you're not. You're not. And
Yeah.
what I do love about all these nameless women in the Bible, not all of them, but there's like 3 or 4 of them specifically, where they just like they have like a real conversation with Jesus. And they are not
Mhm.
afraid to say, "I don't understand this."
Yeah.
I how like it's okay to be that honest and vulnerable with Jesus of like, "I am not okay with this, and I'm not okay with this, and I don't understand this." And then listen, and then be
Mhm.
quiet. I think so many people would say they've never heard the voice of the Lord before, but I think God is talking to them. It's just learning to be so quiet.
Mhm.
And when I say be quiet, I don't just mean with your mouth. I just mean even like internally, like, oh, sorry. Okay, Lord, like, what are you saying to me? And then
Mhm.
believe what you hear, you know? Um, I have another friend who he walks groups of people through this practice sometimes, and I've done this once just by myself, and this is another thing. But I think if you really want to feel that Jesus loves you, is set aside some time to be quiet. Maybe put on some worship music in the background and pray, and then I would encourage you just to kind of like picture yourself literally like sitting with Jesus. Or maybe you're not sitting. Maybe you're walking through a field. Maybe you're I don't know like what, you know. And and he says to ask yourself this, or actually to ask Jesus this question. Like, how if you were like walking with Jesus down the street and y'all ran into someone, how would Jesus introduce you to that person? And he says just get real quiet and
Oh,
listen. And what usually ends up happening, I've done this with a couple of groups of people, especially I talked about our women's home, and because a lot of them are really struggling, like, I'm gonna believe this, but how do I? And so I could just have them get quiet and like, and don't, like it's okay. Like there's no wrong answer here, but like, how how does he introduce you? And so often what they hear are the names that our hearts need to hear. Like, this is my
oh,
daughter. This is my friend. This is this is the one that I love, and she's been gone for a while, but she's back.
oh, Lord.
And just getting that in such a personal way, I think can unlock something so that you start to really know him in a personal, profound way.
That is so beautiful. That's like that
Mm.
is bringing tears to my eyes, and I'm not really sure why, but the second you said that,
Yeah.
I was like, because I think something that can really, like, taint our interactions with the Lord is I think a lot of us have misconceptions, and just feel a lot of the time maybe that God is angry with us,
Mhm.
or, you know, and I think just bringing to mind, like and we can't feel loved if we're feeling like we're in the presence of somebody who's angry with us. We don't feel vulnerable enough to share our whole selves. We're scared, right? Or we want to
Yeah,
protect
yeah.
ourselves. Um, but that illustration of being walking down the street with Jesus,
Mhm.
as you said that, the only thing that I could think of was the way, like I was trying to picture it myself as you were saying it, and all I could picture was
Mhm.
the way he would turn to you.
Mhm.
and his face would have a smile on it. And
Yeah.
I could just see the smile, and in that smile, you just know, like, he's not he's not there angry with me. He loves me. He loves me,
Yeah.
and he loves you. And so I just
Yeah.
love I think we've been given our ability to imagine in our brain, like, not
Mhm.
I'm not saying that we're imagining Jesus, but like that we can like create like a scene in our mind so that we can relate to Jesus when we can't physically see him. I think
Right.
that is a
Right.
gift the Lord has given us to be able to commune with him.
I agree wholeheartedly. I imagination is from God. And,
Oof.
yeah, and he wants to use it, in that way so that you can just imagine. And when you said that, just he looks at you with that smile. It's just that smile of like, he is so like you are his creation. Like he wants to show you off. Like, let me introduce you to this. My
Oh,
amazing. Yeah. So, um, yeah.
I love you. I love that. Thank you so much. So, Paige, before we say goodbye, can you tell us where everybody can find you in the world and on the internet so that people can
you
find your books, they can follow you, they can see what you're up to? Lay it on us.
Ab- Absolutely. Okay. Well, you can find me on social media at Paige Allen, Texas, at the
Yeah.
whole word Texas after my name. I
Okay.
have a website, paigeallen.net. You can find me there. My book is sold basically everywhere books are sold. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever. Yeah, that's where you can find me.
Okay. So, everybody, go buy a copy of He Knows Your Name,
Oh,
unless you are
thanks.
the lucky person who gets it for free when I do a
Mm.
drawing. Everybody else go buy it and make sure to follow Paige on Instagram and just see what she's up to. And my very last question is, do you have any other books in the work in your brain? Is there
I
anything we
do.
should know to look out for?
I have something in my brain and actually it's on my phone notes. I have an
Mhm.
ongoing. I don't have anything like official, but yes, I have an idea that I'm really excited about. So we'll see.
Cool. Well, we'll stay tuned. And it's just been such a pleasure to talk with you today. Thank you so much for coming on to the Second Cup Show.
Oh, I loved it. Thank you for having me.
All right. We'll talk soon. Bye.